And coming up tonight in the wrap, the threat of a veto-proof majority in Congress forced the president's hand and make him commit to signing Iran legislation. Is Hillary Clinton really spending $2.5 billion on her presidential campaign? And New Jersey Governor Christie wants to cut Social Security. Wow, what could possibly go wrong? We'll discuss all of that, plus yay or nay, and potluck. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And joining me tonight, as usual, SiriusXM host, Forbes.com columnist, and the man who lives vicariously through himself. My co-host, Rick
Can you
Unger.
do that? Can you live vicariously?
Apparently you can. I do. Cool, I like that. You know her from television, and she's now the editor of JaneUnchained.com. Jane Velez Mitchell is back. And finally, new to the Daily Wrap, he's the author of The American Boomerang, How the World's Greatest Turnaround Nation Will Do It Again, all the way from down under, sort of, or maybe Texas. Nick Adams joins us. Okay, let's get down to the Daily Download. And today, the Senate reaching a compromise on a bill that would allow Congress to reject or approve a nuclear deal with Iran. This under the leadership of Senator Bob Corker, Democratic Senator Ben Cardin, along with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Today, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has approved a bill that would allow Congress to review and vote on any nuclear agreement with Iran. This bill represents the compromise between the committee and the White House on the Corker-Menendez bill. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest spoke today about the possibility of the bill being signed by the president.
If we could clarify Congress's role by taking all of these steps, shortening the review period, being clear about what it is that they're voting on, making clear that this is a vote to vote later on congressional sanctions, that would actually achieve, at least in part, what the president has established as the priority here.
Okay, but will the president sign the legislation?
If presented with a compromise along the lines that I just laid out here, that would be the kind of compromise the president would be willing to sign.
Okay, so joining us from Washington, D.C. is the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee. That is Congressman Pete Hoekstra. Congressman, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Always good to be with you. Thank you.
Your thoughts on the developments today and some rare bipartisanship in Washington.
My thoughts today are hallelujah. Let's enjoy it. This is exactly the way the process is supposed to work. Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate, in this case the U.S. Senate, working with the president, develop a compromise. It goes through committee unanimously. I may have problems with the specific parts of this legislation one way or another, but this is the way the process is supposed to work. Congress got what it wanted, which is a say on a very important international foreign affairs issue for the president. It was molded in such a way that he could accept it. So, if we would see this more often, the country would be in a much better position.
Pete, it's Rick Unger. I absolutely agree with everything you just said, but there are some complications that may lay ahead, and I'm curious what you have to say about that. First, will Corker be able to resist suggested amendments when it goes to the full Senate? And probably a bit more vexing, while the leader in the Congress has said that he will, if this bill passes the Senate, he says he will take this bill and put it to a vote in the House of Representatives. Do we really think that this bill can get through the House without being attacked and possibly changed by the more extremist elements in the House?
Yeah, I think so. I'm rather encouraged by what happened today. And, I think the people obviously the Senate recognized that, hey, keep the extraneous stuff out. Let's really work at getting something done. This is an important issue. Let's take the politics out of it. And I think that once it gets to the House, with what we saw in the committee today, all the Republicans and all the Democrats voting for it, I think you've got a really good shot that when the majority leader in the House, McCarthy, puts this bill on the floor, that they're going to keep amendments off. They'll have enough Democrats and enough Republicans to keep a clean measure, because at the end, I think really Congress wants to have a role in this process. This is going to be an issue that is all about substance. There will be some politics in it, but I don't think there'll be enough politics to derail it.
Good.
Speaking of politics, Congressman, the Ayatollah has been very vocal about economic sanctions being lifted day one, while obviously the Obama administration supposedly negotiated that economic sanctions wouldn't be lifted until verification began. So even though things were getting along here finally here in Washington, what do you see possibly killing this deal? Is that the linchpin?
Well, obviously, the linchpin is going to be getting it all down on paper, because once it's all written down, the different interpretations of what is now a rough outline, a framework, Iran, Iran and the United States can disagree on the framework, but once it's all written down, the Iranians, the Americans, the Europeans, and others will be able to look at the document and see exactly what it says. And so if these are true disagreements in terms of what they think they've agreed to, or whether these are just political talking points for back home in Iran, I don't really know. But if this is what they've agreed to, is what the Obama administration is saying, they get it on paper. There's a lot of other things out there that potentially can derail it. So I'm not sure this is a done deal, but these differences of interpretation, or at least expressed interpretation, that may get to be a barrier.
Congressman Pete Hoekstra, thanks so much for joining us from Washington.
Always good to be with you.
It.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Pete.
Let's talk about the political aspect of all this.
Yeah, well, we should probably begin, I think, by actually hitting some of the big points of what the agreement is. Basically, what the bill now says, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, after there's a deal in June, would have 30 days to review the deal, assuming it gets completed. Congress can then choose to put forth a resolution disapproving the deal or approving the deal. But if they want to disprove it, it's going to take 60 votes of the Senate to say no. Mm-hmm. If they do that and the president vetoes that resolution, then it's the usual. They'd have to have 67 votes to overturn it. So it's interesting. I agree with Pete Hoekstra. It's a great deal. I, too, have always felt, as you know, that Congress should have their say on this. They're the ones who pass the sanctions. They should be the ones to lift them. Also, by the way, the president is not empowered to lift the sanctions during that 30-day period. Can't be done until Congress approves it.
Okay.
So I think it's a good day.
Jane?
Well,
Quickly?
listen, I think that their bipartisanship is wonderful, but what happens during that 30-day review period? Is that where the Republican mischief begins, where they derail this deal? Because this is obviously a legacy for Obama. He wants to be known as the normalization president, the inclusion president, and that could be something they want to rob him of.
Thank you, Jane. And Nick, we'll get your thoughts after the break. Coming up next, will Hillary Clinton become a record breaker? We'll tell you what we mean next on the Daily Wrap. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Unger and James Velez Mitchell and Nick Adams. New Jersey Governor Christie raising some eyebrows today while giving an unofficial campaign speech in New Hampshire.
Let's ask ourselves an honest question. Do we really believe that the wealthiest Americans need to take from younger, hardworking Americans to receive what, for most of them, is a modest monthly Social Security check? I say no.
Okay, so what do you propose, Governor?
I propose a modest means test that only affects those with non-Social Security income of over $80,000 a year and phases out Social Security payments entirely for those that have $200,000 a year in retirement income.
Okay, so didn't those same people pay into the system like everyone else? Here's more from the governor.
Problems won't get solved if we wait for others to solve them, or if we're afraid to confront what we know to be true. Today, we know this. Our entitlement system is out of control. Its growth is not sustainable, and inaction threatens the economic health of every generation that will follow us.
Sounds like a show on Netflix that I watched. More on that in a moment. Joining us now from Atlanta is Matt Towery. He's the author of Paranoid Nation, the real story of the 2000 fight for the presidency. He also heads the polling and political information firm Insider Advantage. Matt, great to have you with us. Appreciate it.
Happy to be with you.
So Governor Christie has been saying he is a, quote, outside the beltway kind of guy, telling it like it is. The candor, I live in New Jersey, I know all about it. Going right to the third rail of politics, Social Security is quite a statement.
Well, it's great if you get the nomination and you're trying to appeal and fight against this class warfare that we're going to see in the next election cycle. But it may not be so great winning a Republican nomination. I find it really difficult to see where this will really get many folks who are senior voters who can't really make the distinction that they won't be affected, excited about voting for Chris Christie. This is just, I think, a touchdown bomb he's throwing very early into a race that he's barely in right now.
To your point, I remember George Bush, after he won the 2004 election, said that he had some political clout and he was going to use it, and he tried to reform Social Security, a certain degree of privatization, and privatizing. That's the word I was looking for. And it didn't work out for him too well politically. So I'm surprised Christie, to your point, went down this road.
Well, I'm never surprised anything Christie does. It sounds like I'm not a fan. I think he's entertaining. I think he's a smart man. Do I think he really is ready for a presidential race in which we're seeing candidates pop up left and right who are pretty savvy about winning these early states and then coming into the South and Florida and sealing the deal? No, I just don't see it right now. He'll have to convince me. This is an interesting thing. He's certainly telling the truth. We all know at some point some changes have to be made. But this is not the way you launch a presidential campaign, if indeed there is to be one, in a battle to try to win the Republican nomination.
So Matt, it's Rick Unger. So basically what I hear you saying is really good on the substance, really bad on the politics.
Yeah, which is not unusual for him. I mean, sometimes he's really bad on both. I mean, he'll make some off the record comments or off the cuff comments that just can't be explained. But one thing he is trying to do is creating this image that he will take on any issue. He's not afraid. He's willing to, cross boundaries and take on the tough matters. And that sounds really good. The problem is when you get to Iowa, New Hampshire, get yourself down to South Carolina, then have to fight out in Florida. By that time, whatever tough message you have, it's going to be peeled back substantially. And for Chris Christie, that's going to be the big problem. Is he willing to make those changes as he goes through a campaign?
And Matt Towery joining us from Atlanta. Thanks so much for your input. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so Christie's poll numbers have been in the tank with Republican voters. Taking out Social Security, maybe not going to get him too much more support, or will it? And is this a possible end game for Christie, a VP nod, perhaps? Nick, obviously Chris Christie isn't involved in Australian politics in any way, shape, or form, but he leaves an impression with the Republican base, good or bad. Your thoughts on Chris Christie overall?
Joe, I like him. I think he's great. I think he's out there and he's putting the case. I think he's bold, he's brash, and I'm a fan of his style. And I think that Americans in the coming months, if he does jump into the race, are going to be not only entertained, but are going to be confronted to think about things that perhaps they haven't thought about before. And this is the latest example of that. I can think of putting it this way. In Australia, we have free healthcare. That's free healthcare for everybody, even if they are a multimillionaire. Why should we be paying for people that are multimillionaires when they can easily be part of a private system? And I think that the same kind of analogy can be used here in this instance.
I just have to jump in because, with all due respect, you're a lovely man, but I couldn't disagree with you more. I think Chris Christie shot himself in the foot, and I'm so happy because I think this is going to enrage people. He's essentially equating Social Security with welfare. We pay into the Social Security system. People are counting on it, and people's fortunes can change on a dime. And for him to have the audacity to say that, rich people, and then jump in with above $80,000, which we know in this society today, depending on what coast you live or what city you live in, doesn't classify as a rich person. This is outrageous, and there are so many other places to cut. Do not touch Social Security.
I always wonder in these situations where politicians get certain ideas from. Maybe you see it as bold, maybe you see it as foolish. Then I realize that most politicians watch a certain show on Netflix and maybe trying to emulate a certain president on that show. Roll it.
We've been crippled by Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, by welfare, by entitlements. And that is the root of the problem. Entitlements. Let me be clear. You are entitled to nothing. You are entitled to nothing.
You are entitled to nothing. Jane, quickly.
I have to jump in. Frank Underwood is a murderer. He threw a woman in front of a
No,
train.
no, don't spoil it. Come on.
Don't
It was
spoil
never
it.
proven.
That's a couple of
Okay,
seasons.
whatever chance Chris Christie might still have of getting the nomination, I'm about to ruin, I'm afraid. Because I agree with him 190%. I've been saying this for years. His idea needs a little bit of refining, particularly on the lower ends. I would take that 80,000 and make it adjustable based on where you live, because cost of living can change in different places. But he's right. There are people, and I will tell you, I include myself in this, who should not be getting Social Security.
Then give it to charity.
It's an insurance policy. I buy insurance on my home in case it burns down. I'm not rooting for it to burn down. I don't want the money. I bought Social Security insurance in case my life turned out differently. Nobody knows how it's going to turn out. So I shouldn't be getting it.
Do you think a lot of folks your age agree with you to a certain extent?
I think the ones who don't need it do. There are some who don't, but you know what? You don't need it.
Interesting. I want to have this discussion again, absolutely. So coming up next, the president has removed Cuba from the state terror list, but many Cubans are angry. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax.
During the course of the last several months, there have been contacts between the U.S. and the Cuban government. And in December, as a consequence of some of the groundwork that had been laid, both myself and President Castro announced a significant change in policy and the relationship between our two governments.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-hosts Rick Unger, Jane Velez Mitchell, and Nick Adams. That was the president just a few days ago, meeting with Cuban President Raul Castro. It marks the first time a U.S. president has shaken the hand of a Cuban leader since, get this, 1956. Today, the president continued the goodwill when he announced the State Department would be removing Cuba from the list of countries that sponsor terrorism. In a message to Congress, the president said, and we quote, "The government of Cuba has not provided any support for international terrorism during the preceding 6-month period, and the government of Cuba has provided assurances that it will not support acts of international terrorism in the future," unquote. Cuba has been on the terror list since 1982, when they were supporting an armed revolution by communist forces in Latin America. Anti-Castro Cubans in Miami obviously outraged at the news, and Mario Diaz-Balart, a congressman who was born in Cuba under the Castro regime, had this to say about the president's actions. Another quote: "Once again, President Obama has demonstrated that his eagerness to capitulate to dictators has no bounds," unquote. Okay, guys, starting with you, Nick, was it time to take Cuba off the terror list?
Well, I think there's certainly a case to be made for that, Joe. If there's going to be a reset, if you like, to use terminology that applies to a different part of the world.
Just no button.
Just no button.
Please,
That's
no button.
exactly right, no button. But if there is going to be this reset, then I guess it makes sense to remove Cuba off the list. 1956 is a long time ago. I don't think even Rick was quite born then. And, so I think that if that's the way that America's going to move forward, then that's probably a good move. But I guess the upside is that we're going to be able to have Cuban cigars in America.
Well, that's a very good point. And Rick, you're a big fan of that, I know.
Huge. Look, I mean, it was interesting the way the president phrased it. He said that they've had no international terrorism support in 6 months. That's the technical legal language to meet the test.
Longer than
in
that.
reality, it's been 20 years since there's been an accusation of Cuba being involved in anything relating to terrorism. It's absolutely time they came off the list. It is what stands between the opportunity to put embassies up there and here. It's absolutely the right thing to do. This is going to be a good thing for American business. It's time, and yeah, it's going to be great to get those cigars without having to go through all of the rigmarole
What do you think
that
took
I
so
have
long?
to go through.
What do you think took so long in terms of this removal if they haven't done anything
What
in
took
20
so
years?
long is people like Congressman Beyer who represent people in Florida who are married to a past of hatred of Castro.
Well, let me say
I
this.
appreciate they hate Castro. I do. But, there's a whole country out here beyond the aging Cuban population in Florida.
We have to have some sympathy for those people, because I grew up, I'm Puerto Rican, but my family had a lot of friends from Cuba
Right.
who spoke of horrific things that happened to their relatives under the Castro regime. So they are living with those memories, and horrible things were done under the Castro regime. But I agree, it's time to move on. And frankly, I think this is part of Obama's legacy. It dovetails with what he's doing with Iran. He wants to go down in history as the forward-thinking, modern president who sort of brought rogue states in and created a policy of inclusion and ended isolation. And, you know, I think he's doing a very good job at that. We are describing him in a sense as a lame duck president, but look what he's accomplishing in these last couple of years.
No question about it. He's giving an absolute new definition to the notion of lame duck presidency. Nobody saw that coming. And he is just rocking. You may like it, you may hate it,
hold on,
but
guys.
he is busy.
Let's not get too excited.
Oh, it's
now.
true. It's true.
Let's not get too excited.
Say, you may not
now,
like what he's
I mean,
doing.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, he remains a lame duck president. If you have a look all throughout the world, apart from Cuba, what else suggests that he's not the lamest of lame ducks?
Iran. What he's
Yeah.
doing with Iran.
What about Iran?
Making a deal?
Yeah, but that's not a good deal for America.
No, I just
That's
said,
not a good deal.
wait. I said you may like it or you may hate it. You're commenting on the deal. The fact that he's doing all these things, lame duck presidents here do not get this involved in these sort of things.
Rick,
you may not like it.
Let's take a macro look at things. There is not a place in the world, there is not a relationship that America has that is not weaker solely
But
because
again,
of
you're
President Obama.
judging. You're not speaking to the question. You're judging his success
Are you
or
telling me-
lack of success.
Well, Rick, are you telling me that when President Obama sits down with a foreign leader, that he is respected, that they don't see him
That's not
as
what
a
we're
weak,
talking about.
insipid leader?
I'm not telling you that because we're not talking about that. We're
What
talking
leader?
about
I mean,
a
he's been
lame
dealing
duck
with 5 other
president versus
nations
what he is or
and
isn't
dealing with
doing.
the Iran deal. There's plenty of world leaders that he's dealt with. I think the only problem is that when they found they were being eavesdropped on, and I don't think that was something that he personally ordered.
Well, America's been doing that since the beginning of time. There's nothing wrong
sure
with that.
we
You've
have.
got to keep tabs on people. But look, I think that it's fair to say that despite Cuba, despite a couple of other things, President Obama remains a figure in the world that doesn't have much power.
He might be right, but not the issue.
But
It doesn't speak to whether or not he's an active lame duck
you have to say
president.
this about the man: he's staying active, no question. Anyway, it's potluck time next. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Now, Nick, this is potluck time. This is where we go around the table and we share our favorite stories of the day. We pick them. We produce our own segments.
How good's this?
It's tremendous.
Great.
It's a wonderful thing.
You're up first.
I never lead off, so this is huge.
Yeah.
And tonight, America, world, I want to talk about the power of political parody. Yes, alliteration is in the house. So you may or may not have seen last Saturday's Saturday Night Live clip of Kate McKinnon, who does a tremendous Hillary Clinton. And by the way, congratulations, Kate, because if Hillary wins the White House, you are set at least for the next 10 years. Just ask Tina Fey, just ask Daryl Hammond, just ask Will Ferrell, and so on. If you can do a good president or an imitation of a president, you're in great shape. But what does it do to the politician? In other words, there's shows like ours, panels, where we discuss what's going on in the political world all day, but for whatever reason, Saturday Night Live can really resonate with those who normally don't follow politics. By the way, if you did not see last Saturday's Hillary Saturday Night Live clip, well, guess what? We got it for you right now.
Hold up your phone and you can just look natural, okay? And maybe you want to soften a little. Okay, a little more. Okay, maybe a lot more. Great. Great, okay, and action.
Citizens, you will elect me. I will be your leader.
So let's try one where you don't say I or even your own name.
Okay, oh, that'll be easy. Got it. Hello, 'tis I, Hillary Clinton.
Let's stop again, okay? You said I and your full name immediately.
Yes, oh shoot, I did?
Yeah, but don't worry.
Okay.
We'll just delete that one off your phone.
Okay. Well, know a thing or two about that, right? Oh, Christina, meet my hand in the air.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes, good. I am running because I want to be a voice for women everywhere.
Did someone say women everywhere? Hillary would make a great president.
Thank you.
And I would make an even greater first dude.
Thank you, Bill. That's not...
So, now, Lanny Davis was asked last night, do you think Hillary liked that? And he said, oh, yeah, he loves the parody and everything, but I wonder if Hillary's watching that. And she was like, okay, that hit a little bit too close to home because it's getting a tremendous reaction. It's gone viral completely. So, and then I think back to other parodies that have happened on Saturday Night Live that have almost destroyed political careers altogether, like this one.
You know, Hillary and I don't agree on everything.
I believe that diplomacy should be the cornerstone of any foreign policy.
And I can see Russia from my house.
And then, of course, there was Will Ferrell doing George W. Bush.
On the job, making the tough decisions. 24/7. That's 24 hours a week. 7 months a year.
And we can go on and on, right? Chevy Chase doing Ford, and Carvey doing Bush the elder,
Senior, yeah.
right? And obviously Hammond doing Clinton. So, in the end, do you think that politicians like this sort of thing? I mean, it gets them out there,
Well,
but
yeah,
it's usually a negative thing.
It didn't do. It actually worked when Tina Fey. It kind of did cause Sarah Palin a problem. But I got to tell you, my favorite one was when Hillary Clinton came on with Amy Poehler playing her. If you've ever seen that one, I thought that did Hillary a world of good.
Palin did the same thing with
So,
Fey.
yeah.
And people actually think that Sarah Palin, to this day, said, I could see Russia from my house, but
which
she
she
said
did.
no such
Tina
thing.
Fey said.
I get
It
confused.
became fact.
I became confused. Was that the real Sarah Palin or is that the fake one? Because they were running past the camera and you couldn't really tell the two apart. So I think that it really reveals their spirit. And so a candidate should look at that and say, oh, maybe I need to change.
Or, right, you're right about that. I think it's a wake-up call, Nick.
Yeah, it's a great tradition. I mean, it really illuminates the character of the candidate that's running, and I think it can often capture exactly what people out in the general public are thinking, and it can either work for you or it can work against you. I mean, I thought that Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton clip there on Saturday Night Live, that was just absolutely phenomenal. I was laughing. I thought it was funny. I don't actually think it hurts Hillary Clinton. I think it humanises her.
Yeah.
And you see Bill there, and I liked it.
You
But I gotta say, I don't
thought that
think-
humanized her?
I thought it.
I don't know about that.
You know,
I think it plays into a caricature of how many people...
Kate McKinnon doesn't have it down yet, though.
She's
Really?
working on it.
Yeah, I
It
don't
Boy,
kind
it's
of
darn
reveals,
close.
I think, I was in D.C. yesterday and a cab driver said, there's the former office of your future president, and he pointed at the State Department. He said, you know what? You get a twofer, Bill and Hillary at the same time. And I thought, wow, that's an insight into how a lot of people are thinking.
Yeah. People aren't going to dig that deep into policy. They may say, well, the 90s was pretty good. Belle Biv DeVoe, good economy, we're at peace. That's it. Anyway, more potluck when we come back on the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. For once, that subway bumper, we show a subway going down in New York. What is that, an elevator, an L train, and it looks hot out. It's actually warm, finally, here in New York. Anyway, welcome back to Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, and if you're middle of our potluck right now, we're sharing our favorite stories of the day. James, Velez, Mitchell, what do you got?
Well, what I have is Jodi Arias, and let's hope she's finally out of our lives. She murdered Travis Alexander back in 2008, and now it's 2015, and she just finally was sentenced. It only took all those years. And part of my point here, and I wrote a book about this, Expose the Secret Life of Jodi Arias. I mean, this is a very, very raunchy
Hey,
case.
look, we got a
there
picture of
it
her
is,
and
yeah. It's a raunchy case that's dripping with sexuality and deception and all sorts of terrible things. But, I mean, she stabbed him 29 times. She slit his throat ear to ear. Why did it take so many years for us to get to the sentencing? And one of the reasons why is that the prosecution insisted on going for the death penalty. The first jury convicted her, then they hung on whether or not to kill her, and they could have gotten her life in prison. I don't think this judge would ever have let her out, but they decided, no, we're going to go for the death penalty. They wasted a lot of tax dollars, and they wasted a lot of time and caused a lot of agony, and at the end of the day, they got a second hung jury. So I think the prosecutor kind of snatched defeat from the jaws of victory here.
Well, you know what? There were victors in this. and it was CNN and HLN. Especially HLN. I mean, Nancy Grace got, I mean, this propelled her career for 3 years.
Well, it's very hard to take somebody that you've spent many months sitting and staring at and seeing every day. It's like being trapped in an elevator. You might hypothetically or theoretically say, I can go for the death penalty, but when that moment comes, especially if it's a pretty young woman who has no criminal history, who was involved in a tawdry affair, I think she's a despicable, diabolical killer, but I do think that there are better ways to deal with this situation, and in the end, it only tortured the family more.
Didn't she ask for the death penalty at one point?
Well,
she said, I want to be...
She's a pathological liar who one minute says, I want the death penalty, and the next minute she says, no, because I've got family, and this is a woman who, you know, first denied she was there, then said ninjas killed him, then she finally said, yeah, I did it in self-defense, and then she lied and said, well, I was in a fog. I don't remember anything about the killing, and then when she was sentenced this week, she said, well, Travis was conscious when I stuck the knife in him, and she practically decapitated him. So what a nasty thing to say to the family at the very end. They were hoping he was out of it by that time, to basically say, no, he was conscious when I slit his throat.
Jay, didn't the last trial not deliver the death penalty because there was one holdout? There was someone who didn't believe in the death penalty, is that right?
No, it wasn't that they didn't believe. There was a final holdout juror this time around, only one person, and there were all sorts of problems with her. She had watched part of the Jodi Arias Lifetime movie. She
read your book.
I don't know if she read my book, but if she did, oh well.
I just can't believe, Nick Adams, that the ninja argument, the ninja excuse didn't work. It's
my favorite defense.
Juries buy that every time.
I would have gone there straight away, Joe. That would have been my first line. Forget even having an attorney representing me. The ninjas did it.
Anyway, on that note, what did you bring to potluck?
Potluck today is something that will get us all excited, hopefully. So as I have been watching everything that's going on with Hillary Clinton, her announcement, the furor around a historical election, I've got to tell you that this all seems very familiar. This seems like a little bit of deja vu. And I've come to tell you that I've seen the movie and I know the ending. And I don't think that Americans are going to like the ending very much. In Australia, we had our first female Prime Minister. Her name was Julia Gillard. She got elected in 2010 under some contentious circumstances. Everything that we're hearing now with Hillary running, historical election, we were hearing then. And Julia Gillard was a very divisive Prime Minister. She was a liberal feminist, so she came from the same political tribe as Hillary Clinton. And she had a war on men. She deflected all criticisms of herself and her government as misogynistic and sexist. There was a general tightness in the culture. Men didn't feel comfortable being able to flirt and do different things. And I think that this is coming to a theatre in America very, very soon. And it's something that you should be very careful about, because right now America needs to be united, not divided.
Wow, Jane, you are shaking your head violently in agreement.
You know what? I literally almost am speechless. The idea that because one person has certain private parts that are similar to another person's private parts, that means that there's a parallel universe going on between a woman in Australia and a woman running for president.
Julia Gillard just came out today and said she's going to do everything in her power to make Hillary Clinton president of the United States, and she and her were going to fight together sexism in America.
Well, that's her saying. That's not Hillary saying.
Possibly. But my point is that feminist leadership is different to female leadership. You don't want it here.
Well, listen, I think that you probably would have voted against giving women the right to vote if you had been alive back in the...
Thatcher.
Anyway, boy, I
don't need to say a word.
But I love you. Wait a second. I love you.
The Australian PM looked a lot. Wow, look at that. Looked a lot like Claire Danes.
Was that
anyway,
sexual abuse?
when we come back, it's Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap on Newsmax. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay. First up, you probably don't give much thought to the competitive cutthroat world of chess, but maybe you should. A Georgian chess champion, no, not that Georgia, the one across the pond, gets thrown out of a tournament after his opponent noticed a pattern in the Georgian's frequent trips to the bathroom during the competition. Officials looked into the matter and discovered a smartphone wrapped in toilet paper hidden behind a toilet in one of the bathroom stalls.
Checkmate.
Yes, checkmate indeed, or checkmate. A little Australian wordplay. Nice. The phone was connected to a mobile chess application that the Georgian was using to strategize his next move. He now faces, get this, a 15-year ban from the game. Who knew chess could be so scandalous? Should he be banned for life, Nick Adams? Yay or nay?
No.
You're happy with 15 years?
Have a heart. Yeah, 15 years. He'll be past his prime in a decade and a half.
I wonder if there is a prime in chess, because there's no physical part to it. You could be good at 80, I would imagine,
Well,
right?
he's got to do a lot of Sudoku puzzles, I guess, in the meantime.
That's true. Tetris or something. Or Connect Four,
I want
checkers.
to point out, Nick, this is a male chess player. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
is it
I know
really?
it's going to break your heart.
Oh, good Lord.
If you played chess, you'd be the best-looking chess player there was.
Oh, well, thank you. I did play chess in college. I also
Anyway.
played...
It's called yay or nay. We don't. It's not your bio.
Okay.
All right. Let's go.
Nay, whatever the question is, nay.
I got to be tough. Go
Do you have any idea what I'm going to say right now?
You don't care.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, who cares
Do you play
about
chess?
players? No.
All right. More of a checkers
boring.
guy,
Nah, it's
apparently.
boring,
Black
too.
with the sandals for Mr. Unger. I am a nay. I say ban him for life. He has damaged the integrity of the game. Checkmate indeed. From the Just When You Think You've Seen It All files. An Alaska Airlines flight forced to land right after takeoff Monday because an employee had fallen asleep in the cargo hold, according to an Alaskan Airlines press release, because you need press releases around these things now. Immediately after takeoff, the pilot of the Alaskan Air Flights 448 reported hearing banging from beneath the aircraft. The captain immediately returned to Seattle, declaring an emergency for priority landing. Great. The aircraft was in the air for 14 minutes. After landing, a ramp agent was found inside the front cargo hold, which is pressurized and temperature controlled. Said employee was transferred to the hospital and, as a precaution, was also given a drug test, which he somehow passed. And perhaps he was just reading one of my columns. Anyway, he'll be fine. So, do you feel safe when boarding a plane after hearing stories like this? Yay or nay, Nick?
You know, I probably fly here more than anybody else, and I do long haul flights. And I can't imagine, I mean, that would be one heck of a sleep if you got on a long haul flight from Sydney to Los Angeles and you had someone sleeping in the cargo. Wow.
I guess my question was more a loaded one, because if someone could just go into the cargo hold and fall asleep, what prevents somebody who was looking to do damage to the plane?
Yeah, it's a good point, and one I don't really want to think about, Joe, but thank you now
Sure,
for keeping
sure.
me up at night. I
You
do
can take a boat back
appreciate
to
it.
Sydney if you have to. Jane?
You know what? Flying is still the safest form of transportation. I tell myself that all the time and look up the statistics as I'm on the runway.
Unless we're
Good for
flying
you.
here.
That's smart.
I would prefer to think that this was just an awesome summer camp prank. The guy actually fell asleep at work, and his buddies said, "We got an idea," and they picked him up and they put him in the cargo thing. Great prank. You know what? This guy works there. He had the means to get on there. I don't think it indicates that it's that much easier for a bad guy to get in.
You never catch Rick sleeping on the job.
Never catch Rick. Nope. That's true. That happens on other shows, not here. Anyway, humans aren't the only ones who are upset about drone use. Apparently, chimps don't want them around either. This is a chimpanzee at the Burger Zoo in the Netherlands. Nice life, just hanging out in his tree until he notices a drone, and takes it out. Good job. Researchers are using drones to film animals in their habitat as part of an ongoing series they are working on. Should we be able to whack drones out of the sky like that chimpanzee? Yay or nay, Nick Adams?
Rise of the apes. Look, it is a very good question, and I err on the side of freedom, Joe. If you want to whack a drone out of the sky, then good luck for you.
Wow, it's
Whack
like
a drone.
whack-a-mole, whack-a-drone, Jane.
Well, I'd just like to point out that it shows how intelligent these chimpanzees are, and that's why we shouldn't test on them.
Rick?
I like what Jane said.
Okay,
That's good.
The what she said mode. Okay,
I like what
I'm a
Jane
yay as well. I think these things are. Again, I've spoken about this on the show before. I have a feeling they're going to be used as just to bring everybody down. Terrorist vehicles to actually deliver things much worse than studying chimpanzees, and I don't think they're regulated in any way.
There's a great new drone out for taking photographs.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable.
Okay.
So this is one drone. It's really great.
I will get it on Amazon.
You can put your video camera on. You can shoot a whole National Geographic
Really?
special.
Okay.
Awesome.
Wow.
We got one more, guys. An 18-year-old woman, from the Great Lakes region is in love with her father, wants to marry him and have his children. Enjoy your dinner. The teen and her father have been in a romantic relationship for the past 2 years. The pair now wants to move to New Jersey, where adult incest is, legal and stuff. Can you believe this? So, Nick, quick answer. How is adult incest legal in my state of New Jersey? Quickly.
I haven't been in New Jersey. I don't want to go.
Okay, Jane.
It's not legal. I think the father should be arrested.
Only in New Jersey.
Oh, good Lord. I'm moving. That's it. I'm gone. Anyway, that's all the time we have for tonight. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night, 6 p.m. for the Daily Wrap. Thank you, panel. I'm Joe Concha saying good night and have a good tomorrow.